If you haven't been a part of these before, ArtSpeak University, today we're talking about a communication triangle. Kirk, give me the plug. We stole the communication triangle, at least when it was just a triangle. Now today you'll see it's much more than a triangle, but someone else called it a communication triangle before us.
We were working with these communication concepts and cross-cultural communication concepts and outlining those challenges. And then I happened to read Rethink Communication by Phil Bowdle or Bodel. I still don't know how to pronounce his name. But he had the same things that we were talking about, but he had them laid out in this triangle that just, here's a diagram. It makes sense. It helps slot it all into pieces that were useful. And so we've been running with that as kind of the basis we build around and diagram this out for several years now.
Yeah, we've added several layers to it. Those of you that are watching, it is something that we've taught on before. It's something that we'll teach on again. Okay, just full disclaimer: this will not be the last time we do a live teaching about the communication triangle. For us, it's very central. It gives us a good illustration for healthy communication. Kirk, you mentioned intercultural communications. That's your degree at a seminary. Mine was in biblical languages. And I will say that what we're about to talk about for me is that it is translating a message from one text into another. It's not just a matter of which word and what means what. It's a matter of what does it mean and to whom does it mean it. And so I feel like at ArtSpeak and in the creative world, we get to do what I was trained to do. We get to translate a message into a common vernacular. So today we're going to talk about that. I think we may have a graphic. This graphic is ever changing. So if you could throw that up there, Kirk, if we have it. Yes.
So this is a graphic that you can download from our website.
Yeah. So I know there's some different iterations of this. I want to just go over real quick some of the things you see here. Organization's identity in the bottom corner there. This is who are you, and I would say more and more, a lot of our clients, when we're asking that, are saying, well, who should we be? Here's the really good illustration. You can see my screen too. I'll leave that one up, but you can just see how good, this is how I draw it when this is why I'm not asked to draw very often at ArtSpeak, but look at that. That is so good. Oh, Jeremy's got his too. See? So that's us. Who are we? And this is what our branding process is going to help you identify. Who are you? Who's your audience? Who are they? And then what's the shared win? What's the good thing you're calling them up to? The bottom baseline of that triangle that's the two-way street. If you've ever heard communication was talked about as a two-way street, that's the two-way street. But communication isn't a two-way street. We're normally, in most all of our relationships, we're calling one another up to something. Either we want their attention, or we want to add value, or I want my kids to clean up their room, or I want them to get out the door on time, or I'm asking my wife to help me with something. I'm asking, or she's asking me to pick up the kids. There's usually a task. There's usually something in even the most basic normal communication that we're asking. Hopefully we're adding value. We probably also want some value out of the exchange. So it's not just a two-way street. We're always calling people up somewhere good. And so what I'm looking at here is some roadblocks. So you have a roadblock even in the two-way street, and that's about relationship. And that's your reputation. What does the audience think about you? What do they think about you? The closer you can get the base of this triangle, the easier it is going to be to motivate or connect with somebody to help them, right? At one time, there seemed to be a divide in my communication had broken down with my wife. That happens. Anybody who's been married longer than, I don't know, like a day and a half, that happens. And so I tried to solve the conflict quickly with these words: don't be mad at me for that. And believe it or not, that didn't solve the problem. In fact, it felt like the base of that triangle got even bigger, and there was a bigger gap now. Because they, my wife in this case, had some history with us, with the identity, me, and that history, the immediate history, wasn't a good one. And so instead, I just backed way off. We were actually writing this at the time. This is years ago. We were focused on the communication triangle. And I realized, man, I wasn't talking about, what I was saying was, I don't care what you think. I don't care what you feel. Don't be mad at me for that. And so it was in this season that I realized, and my wife and I were taking these same concepts that we use as for church branding, and we were getting ready to go to a marriage conference and talk about healthy communication. And that's when I realized that all communication, in my mind, healthy communication, if you boil it down to one word, that word is empathy. Am I willing to think and feel like they might think and feel, so that I can lead them somewhere good? That's the shared win at the top. Now, there's some overlapping circles there at the top. That is what they care about. That's their hopes and the audience dreams. This is what they hope to come true. They have some fears. They have some apprehensions. Usually, I love how our branding team points out that at the other side of a hope is, if they hope to connect, they hope to belong, they hope for friendship, then they fear rejection. They fear isolation. We have some hurdles to overcome if we're going to create the good thing. But what you want to see here at the top is you just can't always talk about things. You can't talk about things that don't matter to your audience and expect them to care about it. They don't care about it. You have to come alongside what they're already thinking and feeling and talk about. That's the shared win, or what I like to call the win-win-win. Because if you can dial in on that messaging, the person you're talking to is going to win. Hopefully you're positioning yourself in a way you'll win. I think if you really empathize and you connect and you can communicate well, you're going to win, they're going to win. And then those that you serve together are going to win. Husband and wife, if they can connect well, then their kids are going to win. So those around them, their neighbors, their friends, their community. So here's the communication triangle. I had one question for our team. Have you ever just really, really felt seen? Have you ever just felt like, wow, they get me? That, can you think about, and maybe even drop in in the comments here, a time that you felt valued by somebody else? Could be an organization, could have been, and then here's the follow-up question, like, what did they do? What did that individual, what did that organization, maybe you visited a church. I remember the first time I ever visited a church, I was like 20 years old. Like 4 days later, they brought me like banana bread and jam to my house. And I thought, man, that's weird. So that wasn't one of them for me. I was like, I'm going to eat this bread and jam, but wow, they came to my house. That's kind of crazy. So maybe you love banana bread and jam. Now, on the same side, my doorbell rang late Monday night. Trick-or-treaters were done. I peek out the window. It's a dad. For one of the friends of my kids' dad, lives at the end of the other cul-de-sac. He's ringing the doorbell, and I was like, it's a little late for trick-or-treaters, don't you think? And he says, well, I brought a treat. And he throws into because I have my candy ready for like some high schoolers or something. He throws in an entire loaf of banana bread that he had made. It's like, I made this. I want to bring it to you. I felt super valued. So when the church brought me banana bread, not so much. When my neighbor did, I did. So, but that could have something to do with this triangle. I'm going to just go ahead and jump in here. I see a couple people already commenting. A church valued the relationship that I had built with them. They wanted me to come with them full time. Yeah, come on. They want, Mike, we love you so much. Can we steal you away from Art Speak? Our neighbor came over the day we moved into Philly. Yeah, come on. You got a new neighbor. They come over. Corey bragging on how tall my son was. Why? Because my son's important to me. And now I'm not the only tall person in my family. So I like that. So those are cool things. Met for breakfast with my pastor during a really tough time. Oh, I love this. He listened, gave great advice, and validated my journey. man, sometimes don't we just need somebody to say, I see you, that's tough. My old boss saw that I was drowning in work, but instead of giving me snacks or a ping pong table, he petitioned our board to hire me a second teammate. That's great. Yes. Anybody else? Kirk, what was a time that you felt valued or seen, appreciated?
Well, that's a great question. I think of when my mentor, Brother Leatherberry, in the AG you call a brother, who was a missionary, invited me over to his house, and he just kind of he saw that I needed that and stepped right in.
Yeah. Came over, saw what I was going through. What you have to see here is that in heart, I don't know if in heart there was one that said gave good advice, and there was one that petitioned on behalf of for a solution, but there's actually less solutions being offered and more just, I'm with you. I see what you're going through. I value you. I'm here. Like and I think right now I would say, especially in the church world, but this could apply to any business. But let's just talk. We help a lot of churches, most people in this community, church creatives. I think the church is famous right now for saying, don't be mad at us for that. Oh, the Crusades, not our fault. Don't be mad at us for that. Oh, racism 50 years ago, 5 years ago. Oh, current. Don't be mad at us for that. That's not us. Don't be mad at us for that. In fact, don't be angry at all about that. Which does what? When you say don't be angry, don't be mad at me, don't be angry right now, what you're saying is, I don't care what you think. I don't care what you feel. In fact, your feelings aren't even valid. You shouldn't be mad at me for that. You shouldn't be angry right now. Can you see how anti-communication that when we can apply empathy, and I know we've got a whole other core value on empathetic honesty and how to apply it, but in my mind, the communication triangle is the gospel applied. This is how God chose to interact with the planet. He didn't just he could have, couldn't he? I mean, he's God, he could have done it, but like, hey, get up here. Stop that terrible behavior and get better. And then when we were like, oh, well, like we're fallen, he could say, don't be mad at me for that. That was your fault. Instead, he comes down and ends up made like us and then tempted in every way as us. Like, he knows what it feels like. He knows what we think like, so that he could lead us somewhere good. I love that. So communication is the gospel applied. What else? How else? I would love to just have more of a Kirk, you feel free to add any color commentary to this. I know this is more of a 30,000 foot view of the communication triangle, but we're welcome to deep dive on any piece of this. In fact, there probably could be an entire ArtSpeak University on each one of the pieces.
I see that hand, Ryan.
I don't want to get in front of you, Kirk, so if you've got a thought, feel free.
Go ahead.
One of my favorite things, about the communication triangle is I've used it, learned it more and more, used it more and more for a lot of the writing that I do for our churches. I think one of the phrases that I continue to use with people, because it means a lot to me, is the communication triangle helps us, and specifically the church, answer the questions that people are asking, not the ones they're not. My church experience has been a lot of the times churches want to make statements and take stands on things as their initial means of communication. We believe this, we don't believe this. We allow this, we don't allow this. And it's a lot of here's what we do, here's where we stand. And I think that has not connected with a lot of people I know in the past, a lot of friends that I have that aren't in the church, because they don't care about those specific things anywhere near as much as people in the church care about them. So when we come out and lead with this thing that starts with us instead of starts with who we're talking to, a lot of times it just falls on deaf ears because we're giving answers to questions that they're not actually asking, and we're missing the questions that they are. So we're just not connecting with them, and we're not listening and giving them insight and truth and love and hope for things that they care about. And so for me, that's been the biggest change is there's a lot of things I could say. There's a lot of things that would be good and right to say, here's what I think you should do. Here's what I think you should view the world. But every time I do that with someone and I'm not first starting with, well, what are they actually asking? That conversation typically doesn't go anywhere, or at least it's just not fruitful. So yeah, answering the actual questions that people are asking of the church has been one of those paradigm shifts for me because of the communication triangle.
Now, I'll say this. I think in this conversation, especially with regard to the church as a whole, the church historically has been very good at talking. We do a lot of talking. Not known for listening. And yet, listening, the act of listening of itself is communication. In fact, it's powerful communication. If I take the time to listen to someone else, I'm saying you're worth my time and attention. You have value. Your experience is valuable. Your perspective is valuable. And so I think the most powerful apologetic, evangelistic, whatever Christianese words you want to put to it, the outreach of the church today in our culture, perhaps it's listening, an active listening, to go listen to our community, and in that act say, what do you see? What is your experience? What is your perspective? And to start there.
One of the things I find real useful with the communication triangle is when you have done that deep listening, but you're also rooted in something. That section, the shared win, and this kind of goes back to an article Kirk wrote a while back, that shared win section is really where we start talking. We have a lot as churches, as Christians, that we want to invite people into. But if we don't start by listening, we almost always start our conversation in the wrong spot. So that's what I like about this framework.
Usually when people are defensive, it's because they have to be. They need to defend it. There's something to defend. But if we're confident, right, there's a calm confidence, then we don't have to be defensive because we're rooted. We have something that isn't going to go away no matter what somebody else says or does. Here's where, when I've presented this to creative teams, a lot of them at a local church, some of them large, like regional churches, and I come in and we're doing some consultation, and I'm talking about the communication triangle. Many of you on this call have been here before talking to church creatives, and you say, here, let's be empathetic towards the neighbors, to the world, to the community, to our generation. And those creatives are like, yes, finally somebody who this is what I've been trying to do here. And I love that. Absolutely. Amen. Let's do that. And I bring this to the executives, to all the way down. And then in the creative conversation, it gets a little bit more tense in the room when I say, okay, so let's pretend that the organization identity, us, is the church creative. It's the creative department at your organization. And the audience is the staff. It's those we serve. It's our boss. It's those that we're trying to influence. It's the pastor. And then all of a sudden the air kind of feels like it sucks out of the room, because it's like now they realize, if I'm going to influence, if I'm going to communicate well to the church about how the church should communicate well to the world, I have to apply empathy. And can I just say that's my least favorite thing about empathy, is that it's always my job to apply it. I can never demand it. I would rather just have a t-shirt that says you should be empathetic to me. But then for some reason, I'm the one who always has to apply it. Anyway, soapbox done. But that's how empathy works. Like, I have to apply it. And if we can, though, let's imagine what is the pastor doing? What is the staff doing? They got a lot going on. They're thinking about more than I'm thinking about today. I wonder what they might be thinking about. What are their hopes? What are their dreams? What are their fears? And if I can start putting myself, here's the cool thing when it comes to marketing in general, church marketing for sure. Like, it's not brain science. Brain science is brain science. Rocket science, Kirk likes the emoji rocket. Rocket science is rocket science. We're not doing rocket science. We don't have to figure out how to fly to Mars. Now, I think we have some innovators on this team, and I think we're going to innovate some things in this community that have never been done before. I believe that. I mean, Kirk and I knew when there was 2 and then 3 and then 4 and then 5 of us, and now there's, dozens. I knew that Kirk said it early on, but we both have this sense that God was building a team. God was putting creatives together to do something awesome. What? We don't know yet. And I feel that same anxiety is the wrong word, but excitement for this new thing in this online community, because I think we can create something together that hasn't been before. And that's innovative tech. So I'm a fan of innovation. At the end of the day, though, ministry, like, let's think about a good youth ministry, the most innovative. Are they going to have a camp next summer? Probably. Are they going to have a retreat like they did last winter? Probably. Now, hear me, COVID can blow all that, or we know pandemics can happen, right? That could be the t-shirt. Pandemics can happen. I don't know. That'd be a terrible shirt. But if we could start thinking about what they might be thinking about ahead of time, this goes into our, I think, our calendar planning content on our website. We can download, and it's probably available in the community, but we should post it. But what is that? That is a church creative getting empathetic about the rest of their staff. So sit down with the youth pastor 3 months before the last year's retreat and say, hey, I just wanted to connect with what you're dreaming about. Hey, are you dreaming about a retreat again next February? They may not have thought about it yet, but you know what? They're gonna feel seen and appreciated by the creative who says, I care about what you care about just slightly before you do. You're thinking about it again. And I'm excited about it. Do you want shirts and lanyards and invite cards and registration and flags and flyers? And I saw this other church did this thing, and I thought, man, that'd be cool. You could probably do that. Oh my God. Now you're bringing your creativity and you're being proactive, but all of that is on the foundation of the communication triangle, because you're caring about what they care about. Now, you don't have to apply empathy. You can be, but then who are you going to be mad at when that youth pastor walks in with 2 weeks before the event and says, I need these shirts and I need these things and I need all, and you're like, this design is terrible. But I don't have time to change it. In fact, we're going to have to rush order this stuff. Jerk. Whose fault is it? I'm not saying we shouldn't be casting. We're not trying to find out whose fault. What I'm trying to do, though, is put the control and the power back into your hands. How? Via empathy. By just coming alongside. And I love these comments about times where you felt valued, because most of them they took the time. They talked to me. They met with me. They validated me. The difficult parts, they validated my journey. There's probably a story in there, Uriah. Like, like there's, like they said, like, this is man, that's tough. Sometimes you can solve so much by just having somebody come alongside and say, man, that's tough right now. So any questions real quick? We've got another 5 minutes. We can just open up Q&A. I know we've been at 20,000 foot. Kirk, anything else?
I heard Jared's.
Yeah, I had a quick question, and it sounds like I'm coming at you. Maybe, I don't know, but
bring it, Jared.
I think this
Merry Christmas, Jared.
Yeah. You know what? I'm done. No, this hits on a question I have, because I struggle with this personally, of using empathy when you're in a subordinate kind of relationship. Because this is kind of what you're getting at when you're an internal creative team, and like your, boss of sorts maybe is the pastor that you're doing the work with, and use empathy, and how do you navigate that sometimes? Because you're kind of putting yourself in a very like vulnerable situation too, in some way. Like you can empathize. I don't know if you have thoughts on that, but this is something I've struggled with in the past, because it's hard to be vulnerable and do that at the same time. Am I making any sense?
Yeah, Kirk, you went like this, and that told me there may be something that you want to say.
Well, I wanted to get into what we mean by empathy there. Because I don't know that there's a whole lot of built-in vulnerability necessarily with empathy. In other words, just reaching out to figure out what are they feeling. I think what that doesn't mean is like, oh, they're probably stressed about this thing, so I should be too. Or I don't think you have to take that on. You can set your own boundaries, but within that, you're still reaching out to try and figure out where they're coming from. And maybe that helps eliminate a solution. Am I getting it anywhere near?
Yeah, kind of. I think that's part of it. I think maybe the bigger part of my question though is when you have to empathize, or you should empathize in a subordinate relationship, I guess, where it's kind of like you are kind of at, their mercy in a way. Does it make sense? I don't know if I'm focusing on one thing. I don't want to completely derail it either. So yeah, go ahead.
I think because I think anyone who can hear this, that's the pain. Like Jason, when you were just talking about like that you bring that situation to the team that you're consulting, and they, there's that silence because that's the question that they're feeling, but it's still like, it's a good thing to bring up and think through, because you can be empathetic and still have healthy boundaries. You can still be empathetic and pursue health. So I think Jason or Kurt, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the mindset shift that's here is usually we're in those situations and we kind of stay wrapped up in that pain that we feel, which makes sense, and I think it's like our bodies, our minds like go into that defensive position because that we're trying to defend ourselves, we're trying to stay safe. That makes sense. It's a normal reaction. But what this mindset shift kind of calls us to, and ideally, it's following like the way of Jesus too, is having empathy for those that might, be hurting you, or maybe you can't fully trust. Again, it doesn't mean that you have to keep putting yourself in a situation where you're going to get hurt. It doesn't mean that you have to have no boundaries and do whatever, like, it is going on. So there's a bigger discussion there, but that's my like main thought.
I love that. And I love this question. I think there's a couple things. Empathy does put us in a place of vulnerability. Listening is not as offensive as talking. You can offend somebody a lot quicker talking than you can by listening. You're on the offense. I'm giving, I'm serving. Let me just tell you, I only got a couple minutes. I'm just going to tell you how it is, and I got to go. Right. And it's easier. It would have resolved the conflict with my wife so much faster had she just not been mad at me for that, when I wanted her to not be mad at me for that. It takes time, and it takes vulnerability. It takes connection for me to say, whoa, you know what? If somebody said that to me, and this is how I resolved that actually rather quickly. If somebody were to have said that to me, I would feel very alone and very frustrated and very just unseen and uncared for. And immediately the triangle gets smaller. So how do you apply this though to it? And I wonder, even in the world, like, are we not here to serve the world? That's a vulnerable position. And we're saying, wow, you're in pain. We didn't serve you well. In fact, we offended you over and over again. That would hurt. That would be hard. I don't know how I would feel towards an organization that had such atrocities levied against me. I also think when it comes to boundaries in a workplace, and that would be a whole nother one, and we're 201 right now, but I don't want to just, that'll be for another conversation. I just wonder what I would love for us through empathy. I love how Andrew said it too. If you go back and watch how Andrew just said that, he said it with empathy. Like, you might be hurting, and that would make sense. That's empathy. Like, it makes sense that you might be hurting in that situation. It makes sense that you've never thought about getting proactive. For 14 months, my wife and I went to bed when we had a baby, and we thought, we're going to sleep tonight. 14 months. We never planned, I'll sleep tonight, you sleep tomorrow night. Never, not one time. That would have been smart. We didn't do that. All right. Instead, we hoped it would be different every night, and it never was. Sometimes the email comes in on Saturday at 10 a.m. I need this slide. I need that. I need this. I need that. And we just hope it doesn't happen next Saturday. What if instead we know that they're busy, their epiphanies happen. There's the t-shirt. The epiphanies happen. The pastor's going to be in the shower on Saturday morning, or he finally got his notes done. What if we created a template? Here, pastor, I'm not available on Saturdays. There's your healthy boundary. And I know that you're affirming healthy culture, because that's what they say. They want that. I've got a big plan with my family this Saturday. We're going to do this huge breakfast. We're going to spend time together. Pastors do like people, and you can appeal to that. And they like family too. So you can talk about that and then say, but here's what I've done, because I know epiphanies happen. I built some templates. And so as soon as you send them, I'm going to forward them on, or when I get here on Sunday morning, like, here's how you can think through what they're going to be thinking through. Think through what they're going to be need, and possibly create a template. That's in the week. You can also think through with calendar planning. We should do a whole nother one on calendar, how to plan the master calendar of your church, we need another Art Speak University on that, but that would be getting proactive, building templates, proactive, coming alongside departments, but all of that is on the foundation of empathy. How can we think and feel like others, so that we can communicate to them and lead them somewhere good?